Welcome back, everyone. It is that time of year for Prog Tag 2025. So we're going to take a look at what I have. Alright, first off I want to thank Beer and Vinyl. And I've been watching his channel to see when Prog Tag 2025 sort of kicked off. He had the 15 criteria for this year's Prog Tag. So if you haven't watched him, make sure that you do. And I'm going to get started with my version of this Prog Tag. So the first criteria says favorite progressive release or purchase of 2024. And if you know me, I really don't buy any new prog. It's not that I have anything against it, I just basically haven't got to it yet. I'm kind of stuck in the 70s. But my favorite purchase of 2024 was the 1971 Blast Furnace album. It's a Danish band. I talked about this in a previous video, I think from my spring listening experience. The reason why I'm so proud of this one is because it was really difficult to find. So I actually found two copies. I found a used copy to listen to, and I found this brand new sealed copy. So it was really exciting to find, basically mint condition, perfect, and it was a very good price. So I'd been looking for this for a very long time. So that's my favorite progressive release, or purchase I should say, of 2024. So the second one, latest discovery or deep dive. So in 2024 I started a deep dive into Bebop Deluxe, and I've listened to a couple of their albums, but I bought them all, so just kind of taking a look at them here. So I've listened to Futurama and also Sunburst Finish so far. They've been fantastic albums, but I basically have them all here. And I don't like to listen to everything all at once. I kind of like to listen to a band little by little and digest them little by little. But that's kind of my deep dive, and it'll continue to be my deep dive for a little while. Alright, number 3. An artist or musician that we lost in 2024. Well, basically on November 14th of 2024, we lost Pete Sinfield. And he wasn't so much of a musician as he was a lyricist. Basically the two main bands that he was a lyricist for were King Crimson and also Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And if there's one thing we can really thank him for, basically, is that if it wasn't for him, Carnival 9 would have been called Ganton 9. And he's the one who actually kind of came up with the idea of Carnival 9. But he was a fantastic lyricist. And one of the stories that I remember about him and Greg Lake was for the song Pirates on Works Volume 1. And when they were kind of working out the idea and the lyrics for the song, they actually went to Disney and kept riding through the Pirates of the Caribbean ride over and over, taking notes to get the lyrics for that song. And I always thought that was kind of a funny story, kind of going on more of a children's ride to get the idea of what the pirate's life was. So, but we lost another great one, and we owe him a debt of gratitude for all the great lyrics that he wrote for two great bands, and he did do a solo album himself too. Alright, number 4. Album celebrating 50 years, so something that was released in 1975, and I'm a big fan of the German heavy prog band Birth Control, and their Plastic People album is a great album. And song Plastic People, one of my favorite songs, Rock and Roll and Roller, is just a fantastic song, and I think Zeus B. Held was the keyboardist, did some fantastic stuff. So if you can get any Birth Control, I recommend it, especially throughout the 70s, but it's probably my favorite Birth Control album. So definitely a fantastic album. Alright, number 5. Show an album that represents a progressive subgenre. So there's many subgenres in progressive rock, and I went with prog folk, and probably the prog folk behemoth is always known as Jethro Tull. So I picked a different one, and it's a band that I talked about before, which is Griffin, and this is Rain Dance. And this is this is sort of a maligned album, I would say. For some reason, it's kind of, in some people's mind, maybe mid-level, but I think this is a fantastic album. And I think the problem with this album, I don't even think it's a problem. I think it's the fact that it was such a departure from Red Queen to Griffin 3. And I believe that Griffin came under the same management of Yes, and they started to sound a little bit more like Yes. But I think it's a great album and definitely worth listening to, and it's probably one of my favorite Griffin albums for sure. So also 1975, so that's also 50 years for this one as well. Alright, number 6. Show an instrumental album or song. Well, last summer I did 10 obscure instrumental albums, so if you haven't watched that, doesn't really leave a whole lot of meat on the bone for me, so I don't want to kind of repeat myself, but I still am a little bit. But Jeff Beck did do a couple of great instrumental albums that were more progressive, and he got Jan Hammer from the Mahavishnu Orchestra, the keyboardist, and actually I want to kind of focus a little bit more on the live album. And there's a song on here, and this isn't 100% instrumental. There is a little singing on this, okay, but there is an instrumental on here. It's called Darkness, Earth in Search of a Sun, and I would say it's more of a Jan Hammer tune, very synthy, but listening to him go back and forth with Jeff Beck was just fantastic, and it's a great listen. This whole thing is good, but that song in particular, it kind of starts off as a slow burn, and then it kind of picks up, and then they kind of go back and forth. But it's a great instrumental song. So again, that's Darkness, Earth in Search of a Sun. And then of course Jan Hammer would eventually do the theme song for Miami Vice, in the 80s. Alright, show your favorite record label. So I have to agree with Beer and Vinyl. The famous Charisma label, and I don't have a record of it, but he showed the Mad Hatter version, but the Pink Scroll version to me is just as good. I do actually have a print of the Mad Hatter that was sent to me by Paul Whitehead and signed by Paul Whitehead. I'll put up a picture of it. It also has a lyric from Supper's Ready from Genesis, and I believe I had it sized a little differently than the normal size, so it's actually artist proof. I think there's the artist proof symbol on that as well. So, I mean, either one, the Pink Scroll, the Mad Hatter label. But that was kind of the interesting thing when I talked to Steve Hackett from Genesis, and I interviewed him. And again, not trying to self-promote too much here, but if you haven't watched that video, where I kind of reviewed his concert a little bit and talked to him, I mentioned Tony Stratton Smith, who founded the Charisma label, and he told me a story about a dream that he had within like a night or two of me meeting him, and that was one of the greatest prog rock moments of my life. And you could probably see the look of surprise on my face because I was just so shocked at what he was telling me. But give it up for that label. And there's a lot of other great labels out there, but that one does stand out. And I do have a book on Tony Stratton Smith that I haven't read yet, that I'd like to. Maybe I'll do a video on it sometime. But fantastic label. All right, moving on here. So local hero, it says show an album by an artist from your home country, could be state, province, whatever. I was going to talk about Todd Rundgren, because he was originally from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. And I've been doing a lot of research on him for an upcoming video, and he ended up moving to Woodstock, New York, and I moved from Pennsylvania to New York. But there's actually somebody more local that I want to mention, was Randy McStein. And in the Binghamton area of New York, he's been known for a long time, started playing guitar at a very young age. And at this point, he's done a lot of solo stuff. He's collaborated with some different prog people, but he is a touring guitarist for Porcupine Tree, and he's also touring with Steven Wilson this summer, as a matter of fact. And he lives about a mile from me, and I'll run into him from time to time, and it doesn't get much more local than that. So we'll chat for a moment. I have gotten a picture with him that I'll put up here, and he's been in Prog magazine. He's been talked about a little bit. So yeah, he's definitely a local hero. All right, number 9. It bothers me that this artist isn't appreciated more. So show an artist band that really deserves more attention and credit. And I've talked about this band, and I think I talked about him a little bit in my last Prog Tag, but Max Webster, this is a fantastic band, and I discovered them in the beginning of 2020 and listened to them around COVID. I just kind of connect that with the lockdown and everything. Not to bring back that bad memory, but this is definitely a good memory of listening to this band and getting into them. But they just never took off in the way that they should have, and I think they were kind of in the shadow of Rush. They were on the Anthem label with Rush, and I think for the most part, they toured together, but it was kind of a point of contention between the bands that Rush got big and Max Webster didn't. So they didn't always get along. There was points when I read the Rush biography where they did have like a little dispute here and there. But overall, I think they got along because they ended up doing a song together. Kim Mitchell, who was the guitarist and was kind of the front man for Max Webster, did a song with him on the last studio album for Max Webster. But I think they're fantastic, and you got to listen to them. Great Canadian band, just fantastic Canadian band. And living in New York, I kind of connect with the sentiments that they have and what they sing about. Okay. The Contrarian, show your unpopular opinion album lineup song. I don't get too controversial on my channel. I have some opinions here and there, but I'm not controversial unlike some people that I know.
Flower is terrible.
Anyway, okay, number 11. Who did it better? Show a progressive band covering a song or an artist covering a prog song or just a cover song. So I want to go back to the question of who did it better. And I almost did MacArthur Park because there's a couple prog bands that covered MacArthur Park. Well, I want to talk about See Emily Play by Pink Floyd. And their version, I think it was like their second single, and it came out in 1967. And in 1973, David Bowie released his version on the Pinups album, and this album was kind of like the death of Ziggy Stardust. It was an all covers album, and he did a fantastic cover of that song. And I think the golden rule of covering any song is that it should at least be as good as the original or better. And Bowie was definitely able to make it at least as good, and it might even be better. So that's actually a hard question for me to answer, and if you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it in the comments section below, whether the Pink Floyd version of See Emily Play is better or the David Bowie Pinups version of See Emily Play is better. Both are fantastic. Okay, what do we got next? 12. Still going strong. Show an older artist who is still going strong today. And kind of going back to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I want to talk about Carl Palmer because he is definitely still going strong. And I actually have 3 pieces of his artwork up here. One honoring Greg Lake, one honoring Keith Emerson, and the other honoring John Wetton, who we worked with in Asia. And one of the reasons why I'm talking about Carl Palmer is because I'm going to see Carl Palmer's ELP Legacy in March, and actually have an opportunity to meet him. Hopefully I'll get to ask him a few questions. I've talked about him before. I've met him a couple times before. He's signed some different things for me. I've talked to him a little bit before. But yeah, he's definitely still going strong, and hopefully I'll be able to do a video at least reviewing the concert, but I will be meeting with him at that concert, so hopefully everything goes according to plan. All right, number 13. That's not prog, is it? Show an album or artist that could be prog or not. So this is one that, and I always use kind of prog archives as a resource, but last time I checked, the Tubes were not on there. and their first like 4 albums are definitely progressive, and their first album is so good. Such a fantastic listen. I highly recommend it, and you would think, how is this not prog? They got into pop a little bit more in the 80s and whatnot, but they are definitely a progressive rock band in the beginning. Their 4th album was actually produced by Todd Rundgren. So they have some pop in there, but I think the Tubes are a progressive band. Okay, girls don't like prog, do they? Show an album by an artist that has a female member or features a woman on the album. So I am going to dig super deep here. This band called MIA, which is actually from Argentina. They released 3 albums from 1976 and 1978. And MIA actually stands for Independent Musicians Associated. I know it's not in the same order of the letters of the band name, but the female singer, vocalist, I think she played some drums, percussionist, Liliana Vitali is her name. And there's definitely some major female prog artists out there. Annie Haslam, to name one of them, of course, from Renaissance. But her brother, his name is Lido, who is an extremely young keyboardist. He might have been as young as 12 when he started playing keyboards fantastically for this band. So give him a listen, MIA. I know there's another group out there called MIA, I believe, but this is pretty interesting. So there's a female representative there. All right, and the last one, an artist or band you want to dive into or get back into this year. So if you watch my shorts that I have on YouTube, it's me opening up mail or unboxing albums that I get in the mail. And one of them that I opened for it was Kevin Ayers, this box set. And they have a bigger box set that came out. I just got the first 5 albums here. Haven't even opened it yet, but I'd really like to dive into Kevin Ayers this year and listen to some of his albums and digest them a little bit. As I mentioned before, when it came to Bebop Deluxe, he was originally in Soft Machine, and I guess he did some kind of weird stuff, progressive stuff, so I'm very excited to listen to this. And that wraps up my Prog Tag 2025, and I appreciate you watching it. And this is always fun to do. You know, you gotta get these albums out and try to think about what you want to do and be as original as possible, but the fun factor of it is more important than anything. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.